Hi, I'm Ágoston, and I would like to show some projects to you that I'm working on, and I was working on. I do artistic research, and I have a background in media design and graphic design and music. So I started to use coding during my university studies, and I had a heavy focus on sound at that time. So we were making with my friends experimental performances, different audio-visual pieces where I was making the sound usually using open source software. Like what I was using the most is Pure Data and this connection-based, node-based programming languages. And I was interested in the act of listening, and since then I'm also interested in this particular mindset when you are listening around you. So not only music, but listening is a broader sense, like listening to the events around you. And this drawing is made by Pauline Oliveiros, who is inventor of this idea of deep listening, which is near on the boundaries of meditation and listening, where you change your focus and your mind, and you start to observe your environment in an interactive manner, like you open your mind really in many ways, and your perception. So this is something that I am focusing on all my works. The time, as I observe time, the temporal situations around you, the rhythms in your life, not only in music, but you do things which, when you do the things, these are rhythm, cycles and repetitions. So I will show some pieces that are working on this, based around this. So, since I mentioned I started coding, and why did I do that? Because you can extend your possibilities with computation, so you can automate processes. As you might know, you can work with in a very wide area of media, if based on your choice. So these are usually the things that come to my mind and to most people's mind when we speak about computation. You know, different algorithms like distribution curves, randomness, chances, different chances. So these algorithms are used not only with computers but also with other domains, like when many artists are involving the randomness in their artistic process or uncertain events. It's also similar, you know, the observation of your environment and use your environment as a partner in the creative process. So at that time, when I started to work with these new media related audiovisual installations, we were in live coding. This was a scene which still exists, but it's a very niche scene of live performances where people are writing the code on stage and they are creating the sound and the visuals on the stage live. While they are editing the code, they are rerunning, evaluating the code each time, and it is they are building up in front of the audience from zero. This is why sometimes it is called blank sheet, with you start, or empty code, and you build up everything from scratch in front of the audience. I think it's a really interesting stuff, but it's only for, I think it's mainly for people who are coding or who are in this field. So I felt that it is a bit, constraining in terms of what I would like to investigate. So I changed my mind a little bit, and I went to doctoral studies and studied visual instruments, musical instruments, and I was researching how people are interacting with music in a visual way. So not through code and not through regular instruments, but more like visual applications. So at that time, this is a piece that I was developing for the iOS devices. I started to make touch-based musical devices or interfaces, and this was one that I sold on the App Store after my research. So it became a product after the research during my studies. so you can see how it works. So at the time it was really interesting working with these iOS devices. This just came out, and multi-touch interaction was very, very new and novel, and it was fun to think about the environment of the virtual screen as really reconfigurable, you know, instrument. Yes, so I made many instruments with using iOS and the touch and you know these small devices. Published on the App Store, and it was something that became a forefront of what I'm doing now. So it was interesting to distribute your work over the App Store, which means that you can deliver your piece to people who you don't really meet, and you have feedback from them, but not on this stage and not in front of an audience, but more like an asynchronous feedback. So you release something, and it is a little bit like software development, between software development and performance. So as you can see, the scope of the work just changed from performance to a different sort of relationship with the audience. And I found it really interesting. So I went into this direction a bit more. And I started to make installations in a broader sense. So these installations many times were not involve music, because as I mentioned, sounds, deep listening and focusing is not only about musical structures, but more like rhythms, more like the tangibility of sounds, more like the physical properties. So I was continuing with sonification, which means actually turn data or measurable things into sound. And I made some installations which were dealing with sonification in a very wide scope. So as I mentioned, the resonance and the temporality, it's interesting because if you think of music or sounds, we just hear the things between something like 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. So it's like a tiny range of the spectrum that we perceive. And I became interested, since I was working with software and real-time operations, the temporality of software and of our own relationship with the environment through software. So many things became interesting for observation. And this one was, I found particularly interesting, this high frequency trading. Maybe if you know this verb or phrase, it is about the speed of how trading happens today. So it's not even sensible by the human. Today it's sensible by bots and robots that are deciding on to trade a particular, I don't know, asset on the trade. And these are very, very fast. So nanoseconds can happen between trade decisions and changes. So this sort of invisible temporalities became interesting for me. So it's not about sound anymore, but more like, you know, the rhythm and the pattern of the consequent events through time. So I made an installation which was dealing with activities of people, which was a little bit similar to this sort of frequency of the trading. Like this installation called Echo was made in the Kunsthalle, Hungary, Budapest, at the year when the MMA, the politically driven cultural institute, just occupied this Kunsthalle, and this was a turbulent year. So I was a bit nervous, and you know things were not going well with the cultural environment within the country. Actually, it's quite similar today, but it's another topic. So I made this as a observer machine that is listening to the Wikipedia edits of the government, of the Hungarian government. So I developed a software that was tracking when they were editing something on Wikipedia. It's openly available through open APIs. So each time they edited something on the Wikipedia, I was looking for IP addresses of the governmental institutes. I was selecting them by hand. And when somebody edited some articles, this automatically made the system it was watching, and it tweeted to a Twitter feed that edit, so everybody was able to see what they are editing while they are working there in the institutes. And this is the conceptual structure of the software that I was developed. So they were editing something on Wikipedia. Bot was watching if they are doing something and was tweeting in an automated way. And the installation in the Kunsthalle was playing back real time these edits. And you were able to navigate over time. So my idea was to make a listening machine that is, like it's like from spy movies or something like that, which is quite interesting in terms of listening and focusing and surveillance and this type of activities. So I made this as an old radio. My mind was about it would be interesting that you have the tuner of the old radio and you can tune in between the different channels or the different frequencies. Here you could tune in the time, so you could go back and forth in time and just listen the pattern of the edits. It's like a sonification of the Wikipedia edits, but you could also read on the interface what article they were editing, what time. And not only the Hungarian government, but I selected several countries, and I was watching many different countries. And I was, imagining if something interesting will turn out based on this, maybe see some pattern in what they are editing. But it turned out that I couldn't find any pattern, so it became just an experiment. So there was not really a channel down conclusion on what they might edit. Yes, and this was built with a Raspberry Pi, Node.js, JavaScript, and the electronics I made myself, and made a small object on the wall that is a portable object, and it's a small screen that is just mounted on the Raspberry Pi, and it's a very DIY, low-tech stuff that I made there. And actually, I saw many interesting pieces that you've shown, and I really like to see how complex things can be achieved with computer processors and large environments. My experience is more focusing on the small ones, like building from scratch the electronics and using the small devices. So there are some approaches while you are working, what you might use. And I really, on my workshops and all the time, I try to build with the students and with my colleagues things from scratch using open source tools and trying to share the code. So on my website, you can also see the libraries and the software that I'm developing for these projects. So they are all shared and open source. And the last category that I would like to speak. So as you saw, I came from sound and live coding through sonification, and the last years I am working with generative art, mostly visual generative art, and I'm working with a lot of drawing machines, and I like to program the machines, and I like to make physical things that are representing computation, patterns, and our different relationships with time, and how we might, watch an image. So, for example, if you think about an image today, it's very fast to create an image. You just hit some prompt, the AI generates for you in a few seconds or in a few milliseconds, and you didn't even spend any time with creating the image. But with a plotter machine or with things like that, drawing machines, the creation of the image is very slow, and you become the part of the process while the image is building up. So I find it very inspiring to create to watch the process and to feel the process, the time, the temporality, the struggle that goes into the process by the the components of the installation. So this is another piece I was making in Artus Contemporary Art Studio, and it is like a generative installation. Oops, this one, yes, where I was sonifying this structure. So this is a very small thermal printer that is printing out infinitely this pattern, which is called automaton, cellular automaton, which is a natural structure, and I use it many times in my works because it's very interesting. Just very basic set of rules can create very, very complex patterns. But basically, it's like on this image, you can see it can happen in nature also. So these sort of processes are can be observed in nature, and with computation we can simulate these processes. And the simulation itself, for me, it's quite interesting how we can understand how time unfolds over these visual shapes. So on the left you can see it in nature, and on the right it's like from the basic one-dimensional cellular automata, how it goes from the top to the bottom, starts with one pixel and is like, spreading, and different patterns emerge over time. And I just wanted to add some, you can see some other pixel sorting algorithms that I use with my work here. So these days I am using mostly computer shaders, JavaScript and web-based technologies to implement this sort of natural algorithms, or algorithms that resemble nature, and the entropy in nature, the change of the components over time, how they erode. So many philosophical aspects can turn out meanwhile. And here I was using this small printer, and with an Arduino, it's like very basic structure. What it does, I'm just delaying each line of the printer when each line is printed out, so there is a rhythm turning out from the printer itself. And it's quite minimal. It's like an insect or something. Yes, and as it was exhibited, this stripe of paper was 50 meters, and I changed after, so a large portion of paper was collected during the exhibition itself. So this is also about time and how computation, just works and without interruption. And this is also part of computation. It is automated, it is running ad infinite, so it's really not like humans. So the other thing based on this concept is a technology that I work a lot with, and generative artists are using it many times to publish their works. And this is blockchain technology, which means it's a special type of database where there is no undo. So once you put something in the blockchain, there is no chance to reverse. So you cannot take it out from the blockchain anymore. It's like, stacked layers of information that is starting once you start with the Genesis block in a blockchain, and it's starting to pile up. There is no way to erase anything because it's cryptographically safe, the whole system, so you cannot really alter something back in time. It's like an irreversible, immutable, process in time. So this is why I find blockchains very interesting in terms of storing data, in terms of preserving memories, in terms of many answers I think we can find in blockchain technology. And one piece that I was making with blockchains is Turing, one of my first generative NFTs. I made it 2 years ago, where you can see a system that is drawing these shapes, which are a little bit similar to the automata that I shown, but it's using a different algorithm. So this algorithm is a Turing machine, a Turing drawing that you can see here. And as you might know, Alan Turing was the one who invented the read-writable memory computer with the Turing machine originally. So this is a homage for Alan Turing for his work, what he did with computation and the aspects of the modern life and the modern information society. So this Turing drawing machine is like an infinite drawing machine that runs on the blockchain and generates many versions of the same algorithm, many outputs. So you can see the outputs there. I didn't know the exact turnout of these algorithms. I just predefined the colors, predefined some parameters of the possibility space that you can see at the ending images. These images were born when people minted them on the blockchain, which means they bought one instance with cryptocurrencies and they graved the actual code in the blockchain. So the code is living on the blockchain since then, and it's like carving in stone. I really like this idea that you cannot really alter after you made something there. Yes, and this was exhibited at several places. This is in Page 2 years ago in a group exhibition, and there it was exhibited like with a projection where you could see the drawing in real time and the images, some of the images. Altogether it was a 300 element of series of generated images. So it's also called this is why it's called generative NFT, because all the pieces are different, but they are generated with the same code. So at the end, altogether, there are 300 images at the end of this sequence. And here you can see how an image is created with this algorithm. And the sound is when a line is turning into a specific direction, it makes a sound. So you can also hear the rhythm of the drawing. Yeah, sometimes it turns out very minimal. Sometimes it's turning out quite more complex. The algorithm is like it's one line is drawing, and when it accesses a color, it is changing its direction. It is the idea of the Turing machine originally, that you have a stripe and you can write symbols there, and if you read the symbol says where to go on the stripe. It's the same, but I was using the colors for the symbols. Actually, you can find this piece also online on the blockchain if you are interested. There are quite comprehensive documentation along with my research and artistic pieces. So just to sum up, my last few years are about temporality and research, temporality in computational culture, computational aesthetics, and in the relation of blockchains and applications. So with blockchains, I make this long-form generative stuff that is quite long in terms of how they turn out, how they unfold into existence. On the other hand, with the applications, we have the real-time responsive possibility of computation. So I find it interesting to combine these two things. So create interactive applications for the blockchain where you do something, you create an interesting environment, a visual structure, and you, after that, can store as a memory in the blockchain each state of the system. So it's something, I think, with computation for the first time, really start to discover memory, how we should treat with memory and how we should treat with data in the long term. So I find it quite interesting. And this is just for finishing up my actual recent piece that I was exhibiting in collab also with Andy and the people who were exhibiting there. This will go to Sweden this autumn. It's an infinite drawing machine. It was also exhibited in Page for 3 months, and it was drawing continuously. What I like with this is it's a modified plotter machine that is not drawing images. It's not drawing in the blockchain. It's not doing some sort of media stuff, but it is drawing in the sand. And this is something that is very interesting in terms of image creation, temporality, like an image that is created continuously. So it doesn't stop, it doesn't end. It's like overdrawing itself. It really is, it's just an infinite act of doing in existence. So I also use robotic arms these days to make my researches, and I really like that you can find many open source libraries and programming languages to work with these tools, and this knowledge is really available with very friendly communities. So I would really emphasize that, or highlight that the communities are as equal in these pieces as my work, because when I have some problems, I can find on the forums, on GitHub, on software version control repositories, the answers for those. So it's really interesting to work together on the code, and I really like to work with code as a collaborative effort, and this is possible because of the network and because of the many people who are like-minded, and they are also interested in similar things. So these are the two websites I would recommend to you if you're interested. So binaura.net is an artistic projects you can find there that I was making together with Bence Samu, my colleague at Binaura. We are together at Binaura. And on the right, the GitHub site is my research site. So you can read more and you can find the pieces, you can find the codes and all accompanying materials related to the works. So I don't know how we are with time, but okay, so this is the end for this talk. Thank you very much for your attention.